You've been in a bunch of these rookie drafts now. It's so funny. No matter how many years of experience we get, Addison Hayes, I still see people screwing it up. It's self-included, by the way. So, in the rookie draft you've done right now, what are some of the glaring mistakes that are sticking out, even like experienced players are making?
Yeah, I think the biggest one still that I just see every single year is we really get swayed by situation, even if that doesn't necessarily come with draft capital, or in the opposite situation, whenever you get really good draft capital, but we don't really necessarily love the situation. And I think I was at fault of that at the very beginning. I kind of dropped Luther Burden down in my rankings because he's behind DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, and they drafted Colson Level in the first round, and all these kind of weapons, all these mouths to feed. And I think I overreacted to Luther Burden a little bit too much, and he has slightly climbed up my rankings a little bit in the wide receiver realm because of the talent of Luther Burden. But I think that I see, a lot of people go the opposite way too. Like I am a little bit hesitant about RJ Harvey's rise into the first round. I think he's worth drafting there still, but I get a little bit hesitant about it. But then, I've seen Jaden Blue in the second rounds of rookie drafts. I think that is, I mean, I get it. Look, we're trying to chase after a starting running back. And if you can do that the late second and Jaden Blue hits, that's probably going to end up working out really well. But he was like a 6th round pick. And I just like, if you're following the draft capital, there are so many other players that you can draft that have better odds of hitting because of their draft capital than a guy like Jaden Blue in the second round. So I think that's number one. It happens every single year. And, I definitely fall into it too, but it just seems like we get really, really, really into situation, either positively or negatively, with or without draft capital. And we just shouldn't do that.
It's good to see that you're seeing a lot of these things that I'm feeling as well. And you made my neck hairs stand up here. I mean, there's a lot. Let's go after these things one at a time. You're talking about like the being blocked thing. So the one thing I fear is that people, the year CeeDee Lamb came out, they perceived that he was blocked by Amari Cooper, right? Those things change. So I guess that's where you're coming around on Luther Burden, right? Like he's quote blocked, but I mean, Keenan Allen's not there anymore. DJ Moore certainly didn't have, it looked like he was not having the best season that he's capable of. He's still around. A lot of options, but the new offensive system. So yeah, I mean, that perceived blockage, we have to really balance that. And draft capital really is everything baked into one. The other thing you said about Jaden Blue, right? We've seen this with Dameon Pierce before, right? Where he actually got pushed up into the first round of drafts. Maybe, RJ Harvey, second round running back. So I guess really, by the way, I've seen people trade first round picks plus to get into the RJ Harvey business. It's that production now versus dynasty value later thing.
Might be some of the we're down on 2026 as well. So if you can move 2026 into 2025 assets right now that you feel very comfortable with, or you could even push it back a year to 2027, which we view as a much better draft class. I think a lot of that is very in tune with the fact that we just don't like 2026 right now. But like it's still a first round pick. Like we're gonna fall in love with people next year. And yeah, I certainly am still hesitant about ranking RJ Harvey as high as what I even think I have him. And I've seen people have him higher, or paying future first plus to get into the Harvey range. It definitely does, kind of make me hesitant to just invest into somebody that was overdrafted so heavily, according to at least where we were at with mock drafts prior to the actual NFL draft.
Yeah, I mean, just think about like Javonte Williams, right? Like it's, I know it wasn't Sean Payton at the time, right? But I mean, they drafted in the second round. RJ Harvey was a second round pick. Now people are drafting him as a first round running back. I had this argument with some people years back that who was a better pick in our rookie drafts? Was it Trevor Lawrence? I mean, it was single QB, and at the time we thought Trevor Lawrence was going to be the next Andrew Luck, or Javonte Williams at like pick 105, 106. I mean, fast forward later, they both suck, right? For a single quarterback. So it doesn't matter. Bad point. But yeah, no, RJ Harvey, it's again, the 24-year-old running back. People love him. It sounds like we both hate him as far as like what you have to pay to get him, 107, 108. I mean, you see it, but when you talk about putting it on the credit card, man, and having to pay later with the next year's pick. And I love that you brought up the point that the perception of 26 class is bad, but man, you know what's going to happen. There's a bunch of quarterbacks. So on our Superflex rookie drafts, it's going to boost up all the other position players. And you're like, damn it. RJ Harvey's now 25. It was an okay season. You know, you could see it right there. And then the Jaden Blue thing, people are passing like on Tyler Shuck to take Jaden Blue at like 210 now.
Well, Tyler, I don't like Tyler Shuck, but yes, I would take Tyler Shuck over Jaden Blue still.
Right, you don't have to like him to draft a quarterback that's projected to get 7 starts minimum, right?
I mean, he could start 17 this year.
Right. I'm saying minimum.
If he doesn't start at least 10 games this year, something went wrong. He had better gotten hurt, or else he actually is not that good. But yes, I do like Jaden Blue. When you're bumping him up into the second round, I mean, you're taking him over other running backs that, yes, maybe don't have the perceived immediate, path to starting role, like a Dylan Sampson's behind Quinshon Judkins. We thought Quinshon Judkins was really good before the draft, but that might be a situation where the Packers 7 or 8 years ago, they drafted Jamal Williams before Aaron Jones. And we've seen that happen before. The Niners did the same thing happen where they drafted Trey Sermon, and then Elijah Mitchell ended up being the guy, and they picked him like 2 or 3 rounds later. Trey Sermon was another example of a guy that we bumped up in the first because he was going to be the starting running back in a Kyle Shanahan offense. There are even wide receivers. There are tight ends that you're picking Jaden Blue over that just have better draft capital, better odds of hitting because of that draft capital, and especially at the tight end position, if you can hit on a Terrence Ferguson or a Mason Taylor or Elijah Arroyo, even like Harold Fanta, he might have to wait a year because Njoku's a free agent at the end of this year. But that could end up working out a lot more than perhaps a Jaden Blue does. And I'm personally, I would take Jaden Blue as the first rookie running back that the Cowboys drafted. But I personally believe that Phil Mafa is the better bet for the starting role for the Dallas Cowboys if you're choosing between the 2 rookies. I still think that it's probably going to end up being Javonte or Miles Sanders. Because I don't know if either rookie is necessarily going to come in and win the starting role over either one of those 2 veterans. But I like the bet on Phil Mafa at a much cheaper price than Jaden Blue of the 2 rookies. One
of the things I really don't like when people, and by the way, I say this too all the time. I say, oh, this guy's free, right? Because he's not free. You have to still spend $1 on him, right? Like, I know that people are being, tongue in cheek, but Phil Mafa is literally free. Like, he doesn't get drafted in 5-round rookie drafts. Maybe he sneaks in now because there are people that make content like you that are saying his name and, you're starting to pop up. But in most rookie drafts, like, you could pick the spot you want Phil Mafa. What is it about Mafa that you think he has a chance to overtake these guys? I mean, start with school, draft capital, traits, anything you liked about Mafa.
Yeah, so Mafa is a multi-year starter at Clemson. So it's not like he's coming out of, some smaller school or anything like that. He is a Power 4, ACC level multi-year starter. Even was got more volume over Will Shipley, which that, may or may not be, a feather in his cap, depending on how you liked Will Shipley coming out last year. But he did start and got more volume over him in 2023 than Shipley did, and then was the full starter for 2024 last year. He is just he's a big dude. Like, he's like 6'1", 230. The complete opposite of Jaden Blue. He's not really a massive pass catcher. He can do it. It's one of those things where it's like, he can catch the ball, but he's not a pass catcher, so to speak. He's not
Nick Chubb, right? Remember Nick Chubb could catch the ball, but he's not like, a 75 catch guy. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep, exactly. He's not super fast just because, again, he's like 6'1", 230. It's like the Braylon Allen thing. Like, when you watch the dude run, like, he's just not going to run a 4.4. He's not going to run a sub 4.5. And obviously when you compare him to Jaden Blue, who's running like a 4.3, that's a massive difference. But to me, when I look at what the NFL likes for their main RB1 is that generally, and it still is true, even though we've seen a couple of these guys that are a little bit smaller come in and get higher workload, like Jahmyr Gibbs or somebody like that, that generally the starting running backs for the NFL and the guys that get volume in the NFL had volume in college. It's not to say that every workhorse in college becomes a workhorse in the NFL, but most NFL workhorses were workhorses in college. Jaden Blue was never a workhorse in college. Now, it might be because he played behind Bijan Robinson. He played behind Jonathan Brooks. But he had an opportunity this year in 2024 that he still had like 80 or 90 rush attempts and a bunch of receptions. So that's good for PPR. But I just don't view him as a workhorse. I think that if Dallas wanted an actual, a 2-down back plus, or even a full 3-down back, and it's not Javonte, it's not Miles Sanders, I think they would look at Phil Mafa and they would give him, 200 to 220 carries. And I think that it's a higher likelihood that he gets 200 plus carries plus an additional maybe 35 to 40 targets than it is Jaden Blue getting his 50, 60 targets. And then you're also then giving him 200 carries on top of that. And you look at Brian Schottenheimer. I mean, Brian Schottenheimer was the play caller for Seattle a few years ago, who was the main starting running back for that Seattle offense in like 18, 19, 20. It was Chris Carson, right? Undrafted free agent Chris Carson.
And who was there? It was Rashad Penny was there, right? Like that's who
Penny was there.
Right.
They had CJ Procise, I think, might have still been there.
Christine Michael was there. Christine Michael in there somewhere? Was that before that?
He might have just been right before that.
Right. But your point is that Carson was the bruiser Phil Mafa type.
Right. He was the one that got 220 carries, another 30, 40 targets. He was the guy, even over, Rashad Penny and his injury history, over, Travis Homer, all these other guys that were more explosive. But, Schottenheimer liked him a lot more just because he was that consistent runner of the football who then also could catch a few dump offs. So I think that's what Phil Mafa could ultimately end up being in this Cowboys offense. And he is absolutely 100% free. So like, if you're looking for, the next James Robinson, the next Jordan Howard, the next Chris Carson, I think in this class, personally, that's Phil Mafa.
See, there's a problem with doing podcasts like this with you, Addison, is that last year I was on, I had some well-known podcasters on here, and they make a great case for guys like this, right? And it was Luke McCaffrey last year, right? So I get off the damn podcast. I start pushing people out of the way to get Luke McCaffrey in the third round. And, now I'm sick to my stomach because I wasted draft capital. See, this is the problem. You're too damn persuasive. But I think with running backs and receivers, it's a different story, right? Because all he needs is one clarified start, and you can cash out if you want for a third, a second, whatever it is, or you could put him in your lineup. I mean, for years, Khalil Herbert sat on my taxi squad. And then you remember a few years ago, David Montgomery, when he was on the Bears, gets hurt. You throw that life preserver of Herbert in there. It gets you a win. That one win got me into the playoffs, which got me losing in the first round. But that's a different story.
Could have. At least it got you to the dance. It gave you a ticket to the dance, and your team could have done something a little bit more. But because of that one win. Yeah, exactly. That's why I love rostering as many handcuff running backs as I can. That's why I love taking all these rookie running backs that, could probably be handcuffs. Maybe if they end up being, Aaron Jones or Ramondre Stevenson or somebody like that. Like that's just like a massive lottery ticket win. But I do also think the difference is that between Luke McCaffrey and Phil Mafa is that, like you said, Phil Mafa is at least free. You don't have to spend a third round pick on him. Right. You could take Jaden Blue in the third round if you want to. Don't take him in the second. But if you wanted to take him in the early third and then draft Phil Mafa a little bit later, so then you have both shots on it, I'm totally fine with that as well.
Yeah, so what you're here to say today is Jaden Blue is a sucker pick at the 209.
I think in the second round, I think he is. Yes.
Where do you take him that you're like, oh, I'm glad I just grabbed him? Like, what's the ideal comfortable? I can give you any pick you want to take him. Which one would it be?
The first number that popped in my head was like 304.
Okay,
something
so
like that.
Anywhere after the first few picks of the third round, he's in play.
Yeah, because then you get the Tyler Shucks come in there at the 2-3 turn. You get maybe Mason Taylor's down in there, or the other couple of tight ends, or you get Jalen Noel. The other.
How are we saying that? I still don't know. I call it both. I
say both.
I say both at the same time, like you did, so no one can correct me.
Yes, exactly. Or if I'm talking to somebody else and they say it first, then I just echo whatever they said.
See, it's so funny you say that because I sometimes I'll do the opposite. Like you'll say no, I'll say is it Yeah, there's a like that every year. We still don't know. Remember Devon Achan was like that. Achan. Remember that whole thing?
I think we just didn't know it was Achan, and then once we knew it was Achan, I think it was like, all right, you just got to switch back over. Right. Except we didn't do that with Tyrod. He came out and publicly said that his name was Tyrod.
But that was,
and I mean, tried to do it, but we were like, nah, it's Tyrod, dude.
That was 15 years into his career already. That had set. It's like me
sorry,
telling
man.
my audience, after 5 years, 8 years of podcast, my name is Alan. It's just not going to work. How about Kyle Williams, the rookie wide receiver on the Patriots? He's another one that has basically moved into that range right there. We'll start with, are you pro Kyle Williams? Do you think the ADP is fair? And then, kind of push that against your Jaden Blue stuff. Like, where should he go versus Blue?
Kyle Williams is probably my most rostered rookie in this year's class. Because I love him so much. His ADP is so unfair. I don't know if it's because people didn't really know who he was coming into the draft. It was kind
buried.
Of a riser.
It was buried in the applet. So by the time someone figured it out, like it was like a third. Now it's corrected. A lot of smart content guys are like talking about him. So now he doesn't come out of the second round anymore.
Yeah, he definitely should. I think I have him ranked. I just pulled up my rankings. I have Kyle Williams ranked at the 204.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a spot or two ahead of where he goes because people are still taking Scadaboo, Taylor, Bech ahead of him. But you're saying you're in a draft at 204. I'm just taking.
I'm taking Kyle Williams.
Well,
I'd rather have Kyle Williams than Matthew Golden. So
okay, well then you're okay. So that's why when I said it, for anyone listening just on the audio podcast, like your shoulders went back, like your head, you were ready to talk about Kyle Williams. What is it about him? I mean, he's a third round pick that's against process, right? The process bros are going to die here if they hear Matthew Golden was a first round receiver. Kyle Williams is a third round receiver. How come you like him better?
It came down to pre-draft evaluations for me between the two. And to be fair, like I was ranking Kyle Williams before Matthew Golden, or ahead of Matthew Golden before the NFL draft. And that was still even fully knowing that like Matthew Golden's going to go in the first round. That was me in like post combine, March, April. I was like, Matthew Golden's going to get drafted in the first. Kyle Williams, I'm going to be happy if he's a day 2 pick. And I was ecstatic that he was an early third round pick. I was hoping that maybe he would go into the second, but I love early third to the New England Patriots. Oh my gosh, that was like chef's kiss, perfect landing spot. I had compared him to Stephon Diggs before the draft, and then he just coincidentally goes and now is Stephon Diggs' his teammate and can learn a little bit from him if Diggs is even one of the more mentoring types. I don't know if he is or not. But I just think if you're talking about a player like Kyle Williams, who is dynamic, one of the best separators in the class itself, had insane early production very early on. I forget where he went before Washington State, where he started his college career. But he played 3 years there. I was going to say UNLV, but I don't think that's right. I think that's Ricky White.
I'm looking up while you're talking.
But he finished his last 2 seasons at Washington State. And the first year that he transferred was pretty good, but then that was with Cam Ward, actually. And then 2024, he had his kind of bigger breakout year statistically, even though, adjusted production wise, he had a 17-year-old freshman breakout age and still had very good dominator ratings at whatever the first school was that he was at.
If this was an edited video, I would put it in there for you. Isn't it funny? Because you study this stuff all year long. You know it. It just happens to me all the time. It is UNLV. You had it right. You did mention it.
Excellent.
So 21 and 22, he was at UNLV. Transfers, and again, I'm cheating. It's not like I know this stuff. 23 transfers to Washington State, and the thing about Kyle Williams that shocked me, because I don't watch college football. I just get into the rookie stuff, for Dynasty season. Okay. Well, it sounds like you watch. Well, it sounds like you're watching some tape at least because you're looking back at this stuff. But
I dive into it. I dabble.
Yep.
After the season, though.
Right. But it's like I leave that heavy lift to some other guys. And then I just like listen to their thing. If I like what I'm saying, I'll go in and see if I'm seeing what they're seeing. So listen, like the Todd McShay and those type, they're like my AI. Let them watch the damn tape and then spit it back to me. And then I'll go in and see if I see it. But the 14 touchdowns for Kyle Williams, that's the thing that stuck out. Like he's almost like Tyler Lockett was like a similar sized player that was able to be a touchdown scorer. What did you see? I mean, that's a lot of touchdowns for a wide receiver in college football, Addison.
Yeah. And it's funny that you bring up that, like, hey, if people are starting to mention him, then that's a guy that you'll key in on and then go see if you can watch and see what they're seeing. That happened with me, except I have my own rookie modeling kind of process. And before the NFL Combine, Kyle Williams was actually grading out as he was tied with Ted McMillan and Travis Hunter and Luther Burden for like being in the top 4 wide receivers in this class before the NFL draft and before draft capital adjustments kind of further separated some of these guys. So I was like, who the heck is this Kyle Williams dude? Because I never heard of him, and I'm over here on the East Coast. He's a West Coast, Washington State. They play at like 10:30 p.m. And I don't even know if they even play on prime time or anything like that. They didn't do well in the playoffs, or I don't even think they made the playoffs. So they didn't. There was no way that I could have really watched them to know who Kyle Williams was, throughout the season, just as a general casual college football fan. So I'm like, who the heck is this Kyle Williams guy? So I turn on the tape, diving deeper into his numbers, and I just fell in love. Like I said, this dude's one of the best separators in the class. He's a fantastic route runner. He has the pretty solid size. He's got speed for sure. He's got the ability to, take any catch to the house. I saw a lot of like screen passes that he would take. I saw him burn Travis Hunter on a deep route. And I'm just like, yep, this dude is it. And he graded out well in my modeling process analytically. He looked really good on tape. So the fact that, like I said, he could come in and has the potential to be Drake May's wide receiver 1 is phenomenal. So that's why it felt a lot like I was really in on Rashee Rice a couple years ago. Because again, my modeling system said, hey, we should really be paying attention to Rashee Rice. Analytically, he looks really good. On tape, he's a little bit raw, but if you can figure out a couple of things as the potential wide receiver 1 for Patrick Mahomes, I was like, we got to buy into that. And it worked out, I think, for about 7 or 8 weeks if you combine 2023 and 2024 before the injury. So value-wise, Rice is still up there. We'll have to see what happens after the injury. Hopefully, Kyle Williams doesn't go down that route. But I'm hoping that we at least see the production that we saw from Rashee Rice in very short amount of time with Kyle Williams, and then he just continues to grow on it, especially as the Patriots offense continues to grow with Drake May.
In the model that you're referring to, your proprietary model, I know it's made up of a whole soup and stew of things, but what's the one thing? Is it separation that just really makes you zero in and pay attention? Is it, because I know you have probably a favorite metric or trait in there.
Well, so the model is just, it's more baselines. I'm looking for people to check, benchmarks and baselines that previously successful NFL players had when they came out of college. I have it. I had it at running back and wide receiver, and it's kind of evolved over the past few years. This year, I just introduced quarterback and tight ends, and I'm applying a lot of what I've learned over the past couple of years from the running back and wide receiver position. So for wide receivers, it's a bunch of analytics. It's breakout age, yards per team pass attempt, market share of yards. It's got some combine stuff in there. Like you have to have like a baseline athleticism. I'm not saying like if you're so much better if you run like a 4.3 versus a 4.4. It's just like I just need you to see.
It's the whole thing.
I need
together.
A baseline of athleticism. Yes,
right.
So it's kind of like you just are parlaying a bunch of check boxes, and if you have prospects that hit a lot of check boxes, so it seems easy to do individually on each individual metric, right. But when you do all of it together, it kind of separates a lot of really elite players versus not so elite players. And Kyle Williams ended up near the top before the NFL draft. The draft capital adjustment at the end kind of separates a lot of people and creates more of a finalized rankings. It's done pretty well over the past few years. But I think it really is for me. Like if you're honing in on favorite metrics, I'm a breakout age guy. It's actually now breakout season,
right? Because breakout age is there's a big pushback on breakout age now. I mean, I love that you're sticking with it because now it's not cool to talk about breakout age anymore.
No, it's not, and I don't understand why. But I will say that I didn't switch to breakout season, which accounts for players that come in a little bit older. Their birthdays are kind of weird, and so like depending on where your birthday cutoff is to say, well, this is his 19-year-old season versus 20-year-old season. Some of that is not very uniform across, all analysts or their modeling systems. So I just say breakout season. If you broke out at a 20% or 30% dominator in your second year, love to see that. You broke out at your 30% in your third year, love to see that. I think it's a lot better than age specifically, but I won't dismiss age as well because they kind of go hand in hand with the general format of your 18th, then your 19th, then your 20th, and
right. Like you're just saying, though, if an 18-year-old comes in as a freshman instead of 17, you're not, and it's his first season and they break out, that's fine. But that makes sense, especially if his birthday is in like the cusp of the cutoff, right? Like they're,
okay. It's like, well, this guy was born on August 31st and this guy was born on September 1st. And you're like, well, what's your cutoff? And what's the difference? These dudes were born, they could have been born, in the same hospital 12 hours apart and they one of them is being credited with the 18-year-old and one of them is being credited with a 19-year-old.
Your model's breaking my brain right now. I love it. I love it. All right. So just want to let everybody know, RotoWire Dynasty podcast. I'm Alan Seslowsky along with Addison Hayes of DLF. And we are talking about rookies that you love and we hate. I don't remember what the title was. We hate and you love. We get so into the YouTube weeds. Hopefully you clicked on the video. You're getting good information here about rookies that are a little bit polarized. We've talked about Jaden Blue. We've talked about Kyle Williams. We've talked about Tyler Shuck. We're going to continue on. But I want to let everyone know, Addison, that the RotoWire podcast is brought to you by Circa Las Vegas' Stadium Swim and their ultimate draft experience. Have you been out to Vegas in your lifetime?
No, I don't know if I necessarily want to, but I could be persuaded.
Yeah, no, you don't have to be persuaded. First of all, you're making wise decisions. This is why we have you on. But if you do go out there, Circa Hotel, I'm sure you've heard of the Circa Hotel, right? Sports betting mecca, but they have this amazing contest, and we've done it a couple times with RotoWire. If it's free to enter, I'll put the links in the video description below. You just enter, and then your 12-team league. Right? You fly out to Vegas on your own dime, but they pick you up in a limo for this ultimate draft experience. They're going to bring you to the hotel. Obviously, you'll get 2-night stay, and then they give you a $5,000 cabana. This is all free, by the way, when you enter the contest. Draft board, open bar for a little bit, and you have the draft by the pool. Now, again, we do a lot of our drafts online now. So if you still have 12 people in your league that want to do a draft in Vegas, it's free to enter. Right? Why the hell wouldn't you? It's the Circa Hotel Ultimate Draft Experience. At this point in your life, do you have 11 people in yourself that you can actually get to fly out to Vegas? I mean, let's say you were going to Vegas, or is this not even possible at this point?
We've had a home league that we've had since high school with a bunch of high school friends, and then a couple other people that we've picked up along the way. That is 12 team. So yeah, we do that every year live in person.
Oh, okay. So it is possible. See, and if you have a league,
people to fly out to Vegas and.
It's no big deal.
Kind of like the league, like that one scene in the league where they went out there and they drafted. Which NFL player is coming out there to also be there to draft, or maybe to put the names up on the board? Do we have an NFL player that comes in?
Well, we could probably get one of the shot girls to do it, which I think would be way more, probably preferred by some, But if it would be an NFL
player, Ashton Genty to stop by, he's already there.
That's true. That's true. Probably not, but you'd probably get like some retired left guard that was on the practice squad is how it would work.
Or like Aiden O'Connell or somebody.
There you go. Yeah, that's true. Who's that? So Aiden O'Connell, because Gardner Minshew's gone there now, right? So it's Aiden O'Connell. And do they have a third QB? Do they have anyone else? I don't even know. Because at this point, usually I'm good with third QBs, but at this point of the season, I haven't looked into it. Anyway, maybe they'll sign somebody. Look, I see you Googling.
I just want to know. I want to know.
Yeah.
They have Cam Miller.
I don't know who that is.
And Carter Bradley. Those guys are made up. So
okay. All right. Fair enough. We are talking. By the way, also, I just want to let everybody know, if you want to get 15% off any RotoWire product right now, 50% off RotoWire.com. Use code YouTube15. Code YouTube15. Any player picker, any of the premium content, subscription stuff. So go to RotoWire.com at checkout, YouTube 15% off. I'm here with Addison Hayes. Tell me, what's the most important thing you have going on over at DLF right now? Because I firmly believe that people don't just buy one subscription. They buy a couple, and they, just to get different opinions. So what's the most important thing that you guys have going on over there you want to tell people about?
I would say that the tool suite that we have in terms of a Dynasty League analyzer, the trade analyzer, and the trade finder, as you can type in a player's name and then it'll show you actual trades that have been done in real Dynasty leagues on MFL or Sleeper or anywhere. And then all that stuff also comes in with our ADP and our rankings. So it's kind of like that main tool suite to show you players in your rookie drafts that, hey, maybe this guy's fallen a little bit, you should try to pick him up, or maybe he's a little overvalued. You can look at we have a waiver wire kind of tool in the league analyzer. So you can see that we have this guy ranked inside the top 200, but he's, unrostered in your Dynasty League. You should probably see if you can try to pick him up. Just like that tool suite, I would say is one of the biggest draws for a lot of people that come and subscribe to the DLF channel or DLF website, on top of, all of the stuff that you get in terms of articles. You get IDP, you get Devi, all that great stuff. And,
I have an IDP question for you. Okay, I have an IDP question for you. because I don't know anything about IDP, right? Like I always,
all right, good. I'll try.
Yeah. So yeah, but you're on the website. So I'm in a crazy league right now with a bunch of people from football guys, and they, it's 5 wide receivers, 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight. It's one of those nut leagues, right? But they have 1 IDP flex in there, right?
Mhm.
We're in like the 28th round or something. I finally took my IDP, TJ Watt, right? I mean, that's a decent pick, right? Am I going to be, because I don't know shit about IDP. So I couldn't tell if the room was laughing at me because he's old, or if it was, can I just get production out of him from an IDP point of view?
I would imagine that you probably would get production out of him. It would probably also depend on what your scoring actually is for sacks and tackles.
6 points for sacks and half a point for a tackle.
Wow.
Yeah, it's juiced for sacks.
So if you're gonna have arguably one of the league leaders in sacks every year, that feels
so you're
like
good
it
with
should be a good pick. I'm a Steelers fan as well, so I'm definitely good with it.
Okay, and he's going to get a new contract before the year starts, presumably, right?
Maybe. I don't know about. It depends on what the Steelers front office wants to do, and because he is getting old. Personally,
30.
I wouldn't mind if they traded him, and that's just me though. But I love him on the team. I think he's phenomenal. He's been fantastic, and he will continue to be. And yes, if he does get a contract extension, that should just put more faith into.
But you have no fear about if he's on the Steelers and to say he's playing on you have no fear about his 2025 production, right?
Nope.
Okay.
None whatsoever.
Right. That's all I care about, because I figure
is Travis Hunter juiced in that league?
Yes.
Is that
yes? He went in the first round of a start 2 quarterback plus 2 Superflex. So you could start 4 quarterbacks. Hunter still went in the first round of this league. 6 point for interceptions too, by the way.
So, and you could probably play him in that IDP spot.
Or receiver. You could do either. Right. You could do either.
So, exactly. Yeah, you're saying I just got wide receiver 1 production out of my IDP slot, and then you also filled in, your multiple super flexes and your wide receivers and whatnot.
Dude,
yeah, that's insane
league
with Hunter.
Yeah. Let me just see exactly if he's even given that eligibility. So yeah, it says DB/WR on Sleeper. So we'll see.
I would imagine. Yeah. I know I've already seen some people or some leagues say you're not going to get his IDP scoring or something like that, but you can start him in your DB spot. Or I've seen people say that you can't start him in your DB spot, but you will get the IDP scoring when you start him in wide receiver. I've seen some commissions or people have told me that their commission is trying to combat him being like a absolute unicorn from a fantasy standpoint as well.
You get him. That's it. I think you should get all the scoring. I mean, if you're playing IDP, like if you don't have IDP in your league, then no, you shouldn't. Actually, you know what? You should still. There's no points for interceptions. Let's just say you just have like wide receiver. But if he pick sixes, just like you would get if you had Deshaun Jackson years ago, you would still get the 6 points for the punt return touchdowns.
That I can get on board with. Yeah.
So
if he scores a touchdown, then that should be 6 points.
There it is. I'm not saying you should get the yards, but you should still get any points that are associated with your general scoring.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
and that's only going to happen like a couple times a year, maybe if that, like once or twice.
Right. I mean, if he returns kicks, okay, all bets are off. But like if he gets an interception and pick sixes that's like 1 touchdown, right? Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Hunter for a second here. Let's forget all that crazy stuff that we just talked about. Where should he go in our Superflex rookie drafts? I'm just curious of are you just assuming all wide receiver? I would take him at pick 2 if I felt, like I really needed a wide receiver. I'm not letting him fall past 3 for me.
Yeah, he is in the same tier with Hampton and Tet McMillan for me, and then Cam Ward in Superflex leagues. So I personally, in a vacuum, would take Omari and Hampton at 2. And then depending on where you're at in Superflex, that would be Cam Ward or Travis Hunter. In 1 quarterback leagues, then that would be Travis Hunter at 1.03. But I have no issue with anybody taking him at the 1.02, especially if you look at your team and you already have like 4 or 5 running backs, but you don't have a lot of wide receivers. And you just say, well, tiebreaker, I kind of need the wide receiver more than the running back. So I'll take Travis Hunter at 1.02. Or if you just believe in the upside of Travis Hunter as, a kind of top 10 fantasy wide receiver versus Hampton might be a top 10 running back. But if you don't view that same ceiling for him, especially in 2025 with Najee there, I can understand if you still lean towards Travis Hunter over Hampton at the 1.02. I'm cool with it.
It's a tier. It's a true tier.
Yep.
Right. And the tier, you can mix it up however you want. Now, with just talking about the 25 outlook for Omari and Hampton, it could be capped a little bit. We love Omari and Hampton. We love his upside. You talked about Najee. The guy just doesn't miss games. He's more of just a ceiling capper. But also, it sounds like J.K. Dobbins could be back with the Chargers as well if he doesn't sign with another team. Our colleague Scott Connor over at DD Fantasy Football brought to my attention that the Chargers used a very unique tag on him that almost forces him to sign with the Chargers if he doesn't sign by a specific date in July.
I did see him talk about that too. I don't think J.K. Dobbins means anything.
It's basically Cam Akers signing with the Vikings. He's just a guy that's there at this point.
He is just there. It would be Omari and Hampton. They invested first round draft capital into. I would presume that they would be paying Najee more this year on a 1-year deal than Dobbins on a 1-year deal. So you would presume. I also think that Najee is just better than J.K. Dobbins. So you would presume that he would be the 2, and then Dobbins would be there as additional depth.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jack Bech is a player that people love, people hate. He doesn't get out of like the 207 to 210 area in our rookie Superflex drafts. Is this a play? Where were you before on Bech? There's some people that like. What's the other guy's name? Deonte Thornton that they drafted. Do I have that right?
I think it was the Tennessee speedster.
Right. So I'm starting to see Thornton go from undrafted in these rookie drafts to like the 5th round. So we were talking about the Raiders a little bit. Start with Bech, man. Is this a player that you love or hate?
Do not like Jack Bech. That was a pre-draft take that I just held on to after the NFL draft, just because he grades out as the wide receiver 13 in that modeling system that I was talking about.
In the class?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's technically still behind Jalen Royals, Ty Felton, and Alec Ayomaner, and he's behind Jalen, Noel. And
Elick, by the way, Elick is another one that no one knows how to say. You said it the best I've had on anyone on this podcast so far. I have to say.
I've seen people say Ayomaner.
That's the one. The first one.
Yeah. I didn't know how to say it either. I was just calling him Elick.
Yeah. That's what you do. Elick.
So Elick.
Yeah.
But that is with draft capital adjustments thrown in as well. So with the fact that Jack Bech was a 2nd round pick, he's still falling behind a few other, 3rd round picks or even 4th rounders. And he's 1 spot ahead of Pat Bryant, who's also a 3rd round pick. Now, the problem with Bech is he has like no production. That's the issue. So I said this like jokingly, but I was like 85% joking, 15% serious of like how many times are we going to fall for a TCU wide receiver? Because we're like 0 for 5 on that in the last.
Who are the others?
It was Quentin Johnston, Jalen Reagor.
That's a bit right there. Stop the list.
Was Josh Doxson.
That's another Josh Doxson.
Texas.
Yeah, I think he was.
There's one more. There's one more in here. Nope, maybe that's it. It was just Doxson.
Yeah.
Quentin Johnston, Jalen Reagor, Josh Doxson. That's the list since 2016.
That's bad. Well, were 1st round rookie picks, by the way, too. So, but Bech was at LSU as well. Like, how come he had to leave there? Just because the talent was too big there?
Well, he's not as good as Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas Jr. or Kyron Lacey or right. Which that's like kind of the same thing with Jameson Williams got booted out of Ohio State because he was with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jigba. And that wide receiver room was crazy in was it 2020, I think it was, for Ohio State when all those wide receivers were 2021, maybe, when all those wide receivers were there at the same time. So it maybe it is or maybe it isn't necessarily like a bad thing for Bech to get booted out of a wide receiver room that just has better players in it. Right. But he went to TCU and he still didn't even really produce. Like I have him with a 4th year breakout season, and that's fine at 21 years old. But I mean, he's a career like sub 45 yards per game kind of guy. He His best yards per team pass attempt, I believe, was this past year, was just barely over 2. 25% market share of yards. That none of these numbers are fantastic. And I've seen people say that, he could be this year's like Lad McConkey, who didn't have a lot of production coming out of Georgia, or Puka Nacua, who, was kind of like, if you look at his game logs and his numbers at BYU and Washington, they weren't anything spectacular, 900 yards or something like that, which is where Bech was last year at TCU. But the one thing that I've been using to combat that is I also look at some PFF metrics, like yards per route run, targets per route run, first downs per route run, all that kind of stuff. I created a marker system for them with baselines. Again, it's a baseline thing where previously successful NFL wide receivers had coming out of college with these PFF numbers. And I've kind of used it to identify some undervalued or overvalued players. Notably, Lad McConkey and Puka Nacua were on the undervalued side because their per route numbers were so good compared to their seasonal production that I'm they're in kind of this cohort where I'm saying, okay, well, they are actually winning on a per route basis. They didn't have the volume, maybe due to some other good wide receivers on their team or the offense being held back just in general. But on a per route basis, they were very good. Bech does not have that per route production either. So his per route production matches his lack of seasonal production. And my assumption is because I just don't know if he's that good of a wide receiver.
Right. So you're saying, I like this, this is something that's not been said on this podcast about taking a look at the overall and then microing it down to, okay, fine. So maybe it's not there. What's happening snap to snap, play to play? That's so what was it? Why the Raiders take him in the second round? Like, what was the appeal for them? Does he do something well in real football that it's just not going to translate to fantasy?
He's got some pretty good route running. If you look at like Matt Harmon's reception perception, he's pretty green across the board for a lot of routes. And
by the way, green is good in this case, because when you say someone's green, you mean like they're inexperienced. Green is on that chart for those who haven't seen reception perception is a very good thing to have. It's red that's the bad.
Yep, like a traffic light. Green is good. Go. But so there was a lot of green in Bech's profile, which I think that the Raiders are more leaning towards that. I think he could be a good NFL wide receiver. I just don't know if that translates to fantasy football production. Like it's so easy to comp him to like somebody like Hunter Renfrow, who did have like that 1 year, but there's nobody else on the team that could even catch passes. Everybody got hurt. So I think that he could be just a very good NFL wide receiver, and that's going to be good for the Raiders. That probably isn't going to be fantastic for fantasy football, especially when he's behind Brock Bowers, probably behind Jacoby Myers. They have a massive rushing identity with Ashton Denty. It's a very, a lot of big names there in Vegas. And I just don't know if Bech is able to climb his way out of that if he wasn't able to really do it in college, even at some, lesser quality schools, or like you said, got booted out because he wasn't up to snuff with some other really good players.
He's one of those guys where you're never going to know when to start him either, right? He's going to have the 8 for 80 and a touchdown on your bench. You're going to put him in. He's going to have the 2 for 38. You're going to stick with him one more time. 4 for 44. Like you said, he's a 45-yard player. Great. You bench him, gets a touchdown. It's just more, that's why which is most receivers, right? Like that's why in redraft, we take our receivers early. I know running backs are coming back in because it doesn't matter how many bad games in a row Jamar Chase happens. You never take him out of your lineup. And that's true for the first couple rounds of players. Once you get into the fifth, or even Mike Evans, you don't take him out of your lineup if he has 3 bad games in a row. But once you get into the middle tiers, you're like, oh, I have Jamison Williams. I have all these great on paper, and I have Saquon Barkley at running back. But JMO has 2 bad games. You bench him, and then he goes off. So that's the headache of receivers in Dynasty as well. I want to get into some trading stuff. How many leagues are you in right now? I know you've told me, but just I think you're one of the sane people, right? Like you have it like as a 5 or 6 Dynasty league thing, 4 leagues.
Yeah, I think it's 4 or 5.
Good.
Around in there. Yeah.
Don't be influenced. Don't do what I do. Don't do what I do.
I've gotten really good at saying no over the past couple of years. It's become my new favorite offseason word.
Right. But how do you, square that with wanting to do startup drafts?
I square that by not liking startup drafts. I've actually come to that realization over the past year or two that I just don't enjoy startups.
Well, why? This is great. This is interesting, right? Because most people, that's their heroin,
I love drafting. I don't like startup drafts, and I especially don't like startup drafts where people are sitting on the clock for like 6 or 7 hours. And I'm not an anti-slow draft guy, but what I don't like is when people are on the clock for like 6 or 7 hours and they're like trying to make a trade. Oh my gosh, I had this one startup like 5 years ago where we did the whole like derby style, and then in that order, then you picked whatever slot you had. So one of the first guys purposely picked the 1.01, and then we started the draft, and he held us hostage for 8 hours because he was trying to trade back from the 101. And I was like, dude, if you didn't want the 101, why did you take it for like so early in your, like, why didn't you just, and I understand like maybe he saw like that he could pull something on somebody and draft and trade back from the 101 to like the 106, pick up an extra third or something like that. But I was like, nobody wanted to trade with him. And so he just held our draft hostage for 8 hours until he finally took like Pat Mahomes or something like that. I don't like the dynasty startups. I don't like the trading aspect of dynasty startups. I'm such an anti-startup trader. And I also never like my team whenever I finish a startup. Like I always find myself in some weird mix of like, yeah, some of these guys are good now, but they might age out in a couple of years. I've picked, some really good long-term pieces, but I just never like my team whenever I finish a startup. So I've gotten really good at saying no. And I think a good reason for that with joining new leagues is just because I just don't enjoy the startup process anymore. I'd rather take on an orphan and try to fix that than to actually just like start fresh with a new team.
You just gave us probably the best clippable moment in RotoWire Dynasty podcast history. I predict the clip will go viral and Dynasty will die after that. Actually, that is one of the seriously, I exaggeration for clarification, but that is a great take because you're right. Especially this guy at 101, he's on the clock, and then the next go round, it's 2 8-hour shifts. He could wait till 7 hours, click one pick, and then wait again. We've had, again, I'm not going to persuade you to do a startup with me, but because I don't want to commission anymore. But when I am the commissioner, that we don't allow this stuff to happen. And I'll tell you how. First of all, we do 4-hour clock, right? Much more reasonable.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Right. With a pause from 11 p.m. East to like, 7 a.m. East, something, like, hey, listen, set your damn cue. Right. And you're right. There's a rhythm to a draft. Yeah. Oh, I have a clock. Why are you joining a slow draft if you don't like a long clock? Dude, the long clock is if you're driving on Memorial Day to go to take a 6-hour drive with your family. You can't make your pick. Fine. It's not to milk for an extra third round pick. There is a rhythm to a trade, to a startup draft. And when it's done perfectly, it's like a perfectly cooked steak, right? It's like with the seasoning and the temperature, but when it's done wrong, it's like a tough piece of like Outback overdone steak. So,
it like takes you like 10 minutes just to chew your piece
of gristle and fat in there.
Exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. Wow. I was not expecting this. That is a great take, and I've resisted too. So I used to be in 41 startup dynasty leagues. I've pared it down. I did the thing. I know this is not what you're supposed to do. I left dynasty leagues. I paid my year in advance. And I made sure my picks were intact. So I think in most of them. So I'm down to 13 or 14 leagues. I started hating fantasy football, Addison. I started hating it last year. So now I'm in love with it again. I did one startup. I told you the one with football guys with this crazy league. It's like, I think it's $25. It's almost like if it goes south, it goes south,
Yeah, you can experiment a lot more with some different strategies or take players on that you don't necessarily or you wouldn't have necessarily if you're playing in high stakes. You could have more fun with a lot of those leagues. And I enjoy those leagues a lot more than I do the higher
$250 entry.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like I'm like sweating because I'm like, dude, I just put $250 in there, which is not a lot of money, but it's still,
it is in a sense, Addison, that it's not the 250 now. It's that if things go wrong, like you just described, it's 250 for the next 3 years.
Oh yeah. It's $1,000 to even try to get back, something of anything
right
in 5 or 6 years from there. So yeah, I do enjoy those lower level leagues a lot more. But I don't like startups anymore.
I'm with you.
I like drafting. I'll do a best ball draft, and even if it's a slow clock best ball, don't care whatsoever because you can't trade. If somebody needs that full 8 hours because they work, I have friends that work third shift, so they're they're asleep when the clock's actually running, and they're working when the clock is paused. Right. So they're like the complete opposite of what's going on. So I understand when people, they have their own lives, they do all those things. You have holidays in the mix for the summer, vacations, all that kind of stuff. If you need the 8 hours just because you need the 8 hours, I'm totally all right with that. But if you're trying to wheel and deal, and like you say, you're milking an extra fifth or an extra sixth from trying to get somebody just to move down, that's not what I'm about. I'll join a best ball draft. I'd rather join another redraft and just draft, for 2025. That's how I get my draft itch, rather than it's an actual startup that I then have to invest multiple years into for that league, because it's a dynasty league.
And in the trade, sometimes, listen, I'm for open trading, do what you want, but like when there's league ruining trades, right? To just kill the morale of the league. In the one league I commission, and it is a $300 entry one. We started during the COVID era. I wish we didn't have a $300 league, but it's people. I know we're keeping it going, but we have this trade match rule. I just want to run it by you, since you have like a very sober take on this stuff here. Very quickly, is basically, let's say you and I do a trade, right? And I'm selling you Josh Allen in a Superflex, and you offer me 2 firsts, and I accept it. Obviously, way lower than he should go, right? So what we do in our league is the trade stays up on the board between you and I for 24 hours. During that 24 hours, the rest of the league, the 10 people, can make another offer for Josh Allen. Now, I could either accept their offer or not accept their offer. And if I accept their offer, let's say someone said, I'll give you 2 firsts and 2 seconds. Oh, okay, I'll take that. You still get one more chance to come over the top because you made the initial offer. But if not, boom, I have this deal with the other guy. And what it does, Addison, is some people call it training wheels, but it stops. It makes sure the studs are traded for market value. Because how many times have you been in the Dynasty League and you're like, Justin Jefferson just went for that? I didn't even know he was on the block. So pro trade match rule, or do you think it's cockamamie nonsense?
No, I love it. I know I've been doing YouTube videos for like 4 or 5 years now, and I know I've dropped a couple where it's like these are some of the best rules that you can throw into Dynasty, and I've thrown that rule into there.
We use it
in 1 or 2 videos. I wish I was in a league that did stuff like that, because I love it so much. Because I think it increases activity. I always get asked all the time, how do I increase activity in my league? Do I add these extra rules in to try to make people to trade, or blah, blah, blah. And I think this is a very natural way to increase activity, because all it takes is one person or 2 people to make one deal. And once that deal is made, then like you said, like you have a 24-hour window where other people from the league can come in, they can throw their offers out, they can do all that kind of stuff. And then, that can kind of spark things where it's like, oh, this guy offered up, Mike Evans in a second in his like counter proposal trade. I wonder if he'd throw Mike Evans in a second for this player that I have over here. It's kind of similar to what he was looking for. Then that sparks another trade. Then you do another 24-hour thing. And it's that, I feel like, is a very natural way to increase activity, while also, like you said, just creating fair trades, increasing kind of the parity in the league itself. And I honestly, I love that deal. I love that rule a lot.
Yeah,
I like it a lot more than vetoing, because I think vetoing is really dumb in Dynasty. This, I think,
there's no
is
veto.
Natural.
There's no veto in this, because if there's all the other people, all the other 10 have a chance to come over the top. If you feel that if someone's trading Josh Allen a Superflex for a first round pick, of course that would get vetoed. That's like an extreme thing that just ruins the league. But all other 10 guys have a chance right now, right? So
right. And if they don't do anything with it, then they can't say anything about it. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't want to beat paying a first round pick for Josh Allen or something like that, so I can't be mad when that deal actually goes through. I love that.
Okay, cool.
So much from so many different angles.
So in 2020, when we, in 2020, when we had the COVID thing, like Pat Mahomes got traded way under market, but no one can say crap. Like at the time, remember, Pat Mahomes was 101 in Dynasty Superflex in 2020. So he went for, you're going to laugh now at the players. He went for like 108, Teddy Bridgewater and Daniel Jones. And that was the trade that went through. Now you could say, oh, that's crazy, but nobody came over the top. And the problem was because everyone likes their team after a startup, except for you, by the way, except for you.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah. All right. One trade tip though, if you are going to make some trades, there's always trade, or better yet, let's go negative here. What's something, if people want to make trades in their Dynasty League, they just should not do that annoys the crap out of you?
Oh,
And there's a lot of things too. There's probably a lot of things that they like etiquette wise is what I mean. Do you mind the bad trade offer is what I'm saying?
Yeah, what I don't like is when people try to stack you add more meaningless assets at the end, especially if it's in the name of appeasing a trade calculator, and then you screenshot the calculator and send it to me.
Oh, that's a bad one. That's a bad
one.
So
it's like, yeah. So whenever you offer a second round pick for, I don't like
Chris Olave. Yeah, we said the same thing.
So that's your offer, and I'm like, nah, I think that's a little bit under where that player should be. So I'll pass on that one. And he's like, all right, what if I throw in a third? Well, what if I throw in 2/3? Well, what if I also add
Mike Williams, the old Chargers that gives me
Van Jefferson. He might be the 2 on the Titans this year. Well, what if I start kicking it? I'll do all of it. I'll give you a second. I'll give you my next 3 third-round picks. I'll give you Van Jefferson, and I'll give you Mike Williams. And look at the trade calculator, dude. Like I just added so much value onto this side. It's now 500 points to that side to your 300 for Zay Flowers or Chris Olave. I think that can get annoying because I don't think they realize how devalued all those extra assets really are. And our trade calculator, I think we do the best job of mitigating against that. I know a lot of other dynasty calculators will have like a package adjustment sort of thing. I think ours penalizes the hardest, which I love because a lot of those assets are meaningless. And especially if you're throwing in extra players, especially if they are meaningless and they're kind of waiver wire fodder, then if you accept the deal, you're going to have to drop somebody. And it's just like, it makes no sense to continue to add on these lower level pieces. I would rather come in with a very strong offer. Say, I'll give you my 110 for Zay Flowers or Chris Olave. If you have something like that, or start with like a 26 first, or even just go to like 2 seconds, rather than, adding in all of these extra kind of pieces at the end. I think the other thing that bothers me with dynasty trades is whenever, you talk through a trade for like 3 weeks, and it's just like the guy's just like, yeah, I'll think about it. Then you don't hear from him for like 3 days, and then he comes back to you and he hits you up for a thing, and then you go through back and forth. And it's like, yeah, then I'll think about that one then. And then they're still pondering the whole entire time, and it's like 3 weeks later, and you're like, I don't even want to do the deal anymore.
I mean, this is what like any salesperson goes through, right? Like, you sell cars for a living out there, and somebody comes in and says, I got to think about it. I got to talk to my wife. I got to, there's all these things.
Mm-hmm.
If it, again, a lot of times if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. Like somebody sent me an offer for DeAndre Swift and Cortland Sutton. They wanted Ken Walker, right? Like I'm not doing that deal, but I was like, let me leave the trade up there. I said, let me think about it. And then I forgot about it, by the way. It's still up there from like a month ago.
That happens a lot too.
But that's why you set your time out, right? On Sleeper. Like when you send a trade, I said, kill it in 2 days, the exploding offer, because when I had 40 leagues, now 13, whatever it is, you forget the trades are up there. An injury happens, and then all of a sudden the person hits accept on you. And Bush League or not, you're going to have to like spend energy making the case why you should get that player back. So, but I think what you said, one of the most annoying things in dynasty trading is not necessarily the bad offers. It's the stacking the back with useless assets that actually hurt me because I don't have the roster space. And then some like crazy explanation in the chat as to why it's good for me and bad for them. Right.
Yeah.
I love that part.
I mean, I'll never say no to some extra picks that get thrown into there, because you don't have to roster picks. You can just have as many. I mean, they will eventually, unless you're using them as trade chips, you will eventually turn them into players if you draft them, and then you'll have to figure out roster spots for that down the future. But it at least gives you, if it's an extra third or anything like that. I know people that swear by it, like that they won't accept a deal unless you throw in that extra 26 third. It's like, you throw in that third, I'll do it. And I'm just like, okay, man. Like, I'm not going to say no to a third. That sounds corny, but you're also corny for asking for this third. But it's like
when they do that, because I there's a lot of people like that, but I'll say, oh, fine, I'll throw in third, but you have to give me back your fifth and your fourth or your fourth or something like that. Yeah. Make them do it too. Screw them. Fine. I'll give you the third. Give me the fourth.
Yeah.
All right,
get petty back.
All right. You follow him at AmazeHayes _ He's Addison Hayes of DLF. I'm Alan Seslowsky, and we'll be back next week with another Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast.